Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is underwritten by...
Located on Lake Pontchartrain, Brisbee's Lakefront Restaurant and Bar offers traditional West End favorites, a scenic view, oysters, and numerous tasty options. More information is available at 504-304-4125 or brisbeesrestaurant.com. Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House has been shucking here since 1979. Located at 3117 21st Street in Metairie, Mr. Ed's Oyster Bar and Fish House offers raw, fried, and grilled oysters as well as a range of Cajun and Creole dishes. Enjoy a dozen with a smile. Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.
Good evening, New Orleans, and welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Over the next hour, I'm going to talk a little bit about the high school championships, the New Orleans Saints, the LSU Tigers, and the New Orleans Pelicans. Got a great panel to break it down for you tonight. Jude Young of WGSO Radio and SportsNola.com, and Garland Gillen of Fox 8 Sports. Guys, welcome to the show. Always great to have you guys back on the panel. Let's start off a little bit, letting the folks know a little bit about what you're involved in. Jude, we'll start with you. You got your hands in a lot of pots right now. Talk about it.
Always busy, but certainly right now with SportsNola.com's coverage of the state high school football championships at the Dome on Friday and Saturday night, and WGSO, a broadcast partner of ours, and SportsNolas will broadcast all three of those games on Saturday, and of course we'll have Ken Trahan's original on Friday night. Unfortunately, I won't be able to be involved in any of that. I'll be on the road with the UNO Privateers, men's basketball, the mid-major team of the week by one publication after beating Tulane and Washington State last week. We're headed to Northwestern in Chicago, ready for the snow, but fortunately we'll be indoors and looking to try to keep a 3-game winning streak going. And all of that is part of what I do. I also spend a little time on 990 AM with a show from 6 to 7 on Tuesdays and Wednesday night, talking sports, of course, and the Saints in particular, a big topic right now, and not in the positive, unfortunately.
Before we go to Garland, signature win for the Privateers, going up to Washington and get that win, huh?
It was really impressive that they were able to carry over an emotional game against Tulane. A crosstown rivalry game is one thing, and the Green Wave are clearly struggling. But to be able to go up and play a Pac-12 team, UNO hadn't beaten one since 1998. So Mark Schlesinger's really got this team with an identity right now. They've got a veteran team. 3 key seniors are playing awfully well, and a couple of recent additions to the club via junior college making a big difference as well.
Great coach, great guy.
No doubt.
Mark Schlesinger, no doubt about it. Garland, welcome back. God, you guys are busy over at Fox 8. I mean, I guess when you get to the end of the football season, you can breathe a little bit, but you guys have shows almost every single night. You know, all of you guys have blogs. Tell us a little bit about that. Of course, the great way to do that is to check out your app over there. So give us the rundown.
Yeah, on Mondays we had the Jim Henderson Black and Gold Review. Then Thursday, Saints game plan. Friday night, this is our last edition of Fox 8 Football Friday, the playoff edition. We're going to get you ready for all the big games on Saturday in the Class 3A, 4A, and 5A non-select state championships. And then on Sunday, we have tailgate at 10 in the morning, and then we wrap it all up with final play. So this is we're getting to the end. We got 4 weeks left of the Saints regular season. So once January hits, we can all take a small breather before you get ready for the NFL Draft National Signing Day on February 1st. So it's been a rough season. We had a lot of losing teams to cover, but at least high school state championships, we're going to probably have 1 or 2 winners this weekend.
And you got an interesting blog as well. Tell the folks about your blog.
Yeah, so not too many people are into soccer as much as I am. I mean, I love college football. I'm an AP voter, and I love the NFL, but I also pay attention heavily to European soccer, and I love food, and I love football. So I put them all together. It's football, football, food. And I do it. I got one coming this weekend. I'm going to write it the next few days on a po' boy shop that I went to the other day. So it's something a little different. It lets me out of my box there and lets me do a little something that is not normal.
That's great. Let's start off with the high school championships back in the Dome this weekend. Both you guys cover high school football. Talk a little bit about the championships this weekend, what folks can expect.
Well, locally, I think the focus is going to be clearly on Saturday, as Garland mentioned, 3A through 5A. That's where the local teams are. We have some very talented teams, obviously, getting that far. And I think from a recruiting angle, and I recommend Renee's article, Renee Nato on sportsnola.com, breaking down who you really want to watch if you don't have a dog in the fight, so to speak. But these are very good teams, and it's fortunate this year that at least with this split, with 9 different championships being decided, that we wound up having what I think, when you look at Saturday with the big schools, the big classifications, 6 very good football teams, all playing their best ball at the right time, starting with Lutcher and Amit. Lutcher's the defending 3A champion, and John Trey Kirkland is a fantastic dual-threat quarterback, although committed to LSU, he won't play that position. Of course, you want to put your best player at the quarterback spot if you can on the high school level, and Meet's very talented, too. Devonta Smith may be the best wide receiver in the country in his class, so you watch him on the other side. And then we get into games that are so intriguing because 4A has a rematch from last year. Carr and Neville, I think, are the 2 best teams in the state, period. Right. And Neville on a long win streak, 31 games. They're so good because they keep churning out the talent and they know how to win. But on the flip side, Carr, if they're ever going to do it against a team like Neville, this is the time to do it. Alden Clark is a terrific quarterback, committed to Arkansas State. I think he's been under-recruited, and the skill talent all over the place. It's a list. I don't have enough time to talk about these guys. So that offense against an always good Neville defense will be a blast. And I think the most under-recruited guy in Louisiana, even though he's an SEC commitment, plays for Landry Walker. They're going up against the monster in Class 5A, that is West Monroe. And Keaton Thompson is tremendous at quarterback, committed to Mississippi State. LSU has gotten in late, and when we talk about LSU and the direction of their offense, it's mistakes like these that have happened in the past that may come back to haunt the Tigers again. If Landry Walker is going to win, they're going to need Thompson to play at an elite level. And when you see him, you're going to think Dak Prescott. That's how good he is. As a high school quarterback, I don't know if that's his path, but he's that exciting. And West Monroe, though, knows how to win in these spots in the Dome. Landry Walker looking for their first title.
You guys have done a great job covering high school sports all year long over at Fox 8. Give us your take on the championships.
It's crazy to think that the 4A and 5A teams are both in Algiers. I mean, what's in the water over in Algiers that Landry Walker and Carr are probably 2 of the best offenses in the state. Their quarterbacks are fantastic, and Alden Clark and Thompson. In running back for Landry Walker, he's going to West Virginia next year, Tevin Bush. There's going to be a lot of points scored in the Dome, but if you're an LSU fan, you want to watch in 3A and Smith, the wide receiver from Amite. LSU's still in the running for him. He's kind of shut down his recruitment, not talking about right now. That's going to heat up again in January. I know Thompson's gone on television this weekend saying that Mississippi State is still his team. But when you got LSU calling, you got Jabbar Jalouk is the guy recruiting you. He's a legend on the West Bank. I think that Thompson might flip in the end, especially if Miles Brennan from St. Stanislaus goes to Oklahoma State instead. Lowell Narcisse is still solid to LSU. He's doing his official visit this weekend, so I think Lowell still goes to LSU. Miles Brennan's a wild card right now. Reopened his recruitment. He's still a verbal commitment, but when you offer a guy like Tua, who's still going to go to Alabama, one of the top quarterbacks in the country, I think that ruffled some feathers in Bay St. Louis. So there's a lot of guys to watch this weekend if you're an LSU fan, if you don't have no dog in the fight. We would normally start off with the Saints. Let's go to LSU since we've kind of morphed from high school football into the Tigers. There were reports this morning that Lane Kiffin was going to be the next head coach at Houston. Garland, talk a little bit about that because those reports are erroneous, right? Yeah.
Talk a little bit about that.
USA Today came out this morning and said Kiffin was get the job. Houston has backed off that story. They told him no way. Right now they're meeting tonight. The board is it's down to 4 people. It's Les Miles, Lane Kiffin, Orlando, the defensive coordinator at Houston, and Major Applewhite, Baton Rouge native, the offensive coordinator. They're meeting tonight to also figure out a way to make a massive buyout. They're tired of being a stepping stone program to bigger things. I think they're going to put a massive buyout in place, which is smart for them because these coaches are hungry for a top gig. Lane Kiffin, that's me interested in Lane because Lane's probably using this as a stepping stone. He's going to get 2 or 3 years. If they light it up, Lane Kiffin wants a Power 5 team because Houston's going to be in the American Athletic Conference for a long time. Big 12 has shied away. They said, no way, we're not expanding. That's the reason they lost Tom Herman because Tom Herman had a $5 million bonus in his contract if the Americans joined the Big 12. Houston did.
Yes.
So that's why he bailed. They're not going anywhere, so I'm intrigued to see if they're putting this in place for a person like Lane Kiffin. Les Miles, if he got the job, this is probably his last job. Orlando and Applewhite, they're up-and-comers, so that might affect them too. So it's smart by Houston's part, but I don't know if it's the right way to go. Look at Tulane. I'll take a Tommy Bowden year. I just want him to be good again. I don't care if Willie Fritz is in and out in 2 years. I just want him to go to bowl games both years. Obviously, that didn't happen this year.
Sure. When you look at that situation, Applewhite's been mentioned as one of the possible offensive coordinators for LSU. Kiffin is obviously the front runner there. LSU kind of waiting on this Houston decision right now.
Well, fortunately, they're not in a hurry because they're not necessarily needing to make any public moves, although recruiting clearly is affected as far as letting people know what the future is going to be until after the bowl game. But just like Garland covered, it's important to understand where Lane Kiffin's mind is at. He's thinking the next stop, because he's leaving Alabama, and right now it looks like it's either going to be Houston or LSU. It's a stepping stone job for him. 2 or 3 years, has success to fully rehabilitate his name after his issues and past jobs as a head coach, so he can move on. LSU's just looking for 2 or 3 really good years from somebody. It wouldn't be a surprise if it winds up being between Applewhite and Kiffin, because I think one of those two will wind up being Houston's coach, that LSU winds up with the other one. And if I had to bet right now, because of what Garland covered, I think it's going to be Applewhite, because I don't think he's going to mind the big buyout to get his chance to take over a program that, we mentioned the other candidates. Houston wins with offense. Houston's only success in the last 3 decades has been a high-powered passing football team. That's what they are right now. They need to keep that going, and they know that Applewhite can continue to manage that, and they know that Kiffin, if he committed, would be the high-profile guy that wants to throw the football. But in the end, I think Kiffin's going to wind up at LSU, and Ed Orgeron made that gamble. If he doesn't, then Applewhite's certainly one of the top 2 or 3 candidates whose name keeps getting bandied about after that.
You know, it's interesting that you mentioned the buyout, and I agree with you. If you're Lane Kiffin, why do you want to be kind of boxed in at the University of Houston with a big buyout if you're successful over a couple years, rehabilitate your reputation, and then it's going to be very difficult for one of the Power 5 conferences to come calling for you. It may be a situation where that's one where he has to back off on.
Lane Kiffin, I think if he doesn't get this Houston job, or South Florida's job is now open to a Willie Taggart going to Oregon, if he doesn't get either one of those jobs, go to LSU, because a lot of people still think that his success is just mostly a part of Nick Saban's recruiting. Imagine if you go to LSU and you get a quarterback in there and y'all win and y'all beat Alabama and you make a run in the semifinals. Lane Kiffin can have any job in America. He can say he did it 2 different places. Because there's still a lot of people out there that think that Lane Kiffin, yes, is the offensive genius, but Saban's the one that's the conductor of this train, and Lane's in the back of the train. So
and the type of talent that he had at Alabama as well.
Yeah, Jalen Hurts. That was the interesting thing with Orgeron offering to Tagliavoa. I might have messed up a little bit, but Jalen Hurts is not an NFL quarterback. He's going to be there for 3 more years after this season. Why would Tua want to sit on the bench for 3 more years behind Alabama when you can go to LSU and you can start right away?
Right.
Give it to him.
I think that's a real signal as to what they're looking for as an offensive coordinator. They've seen what Kiffin could do with Hurts. They know what Applewhite can do with a mobile quarterback, a dual threat guy. And that's the big reason for the change in tone from Ed Orgeron. You remember early on when he took over as interim coach, he said, we want to basically reproduce what was going on at USC about a decade ago, pro-style quarterbacks, and go that direction. Why the 180 turn? Because he is CEO, that term that's been thrown around quite a bit, and he knows that the future for LSU, based on who he's talked to and the candidates he considered weeks ago, hoping he would be the head coach permanently, those coaches want to have those dual threats and want to run more of the spread offense. That's the direction LSU's clearly going in. The big question is not who they're going to hire, because they're going to hire somebody that brings those type of credentials to run that offense, but what are they going to do with a senior quarterback coming back in Danny Etling? They're going to reopen the quarterback competition, but it's square peg, round hole when you talk about Etling, because he's mobile for a pro-style quarterback, but he can't run the modern college spread.
I have not had a chance to have either of you guys on the show since Coach O got the permanent job. Garland, I'll start with you. Talk about the process. Talk about him being awarded the head coaching job at LSU. Your thoughts?
Well, $3 million was what he got. Tom Herman was looking for $6 million. So at least now you're taking that extra money that was going to go to Herman and now you can spread the assistants. Dave Aranda is now the top paid assistant in America at $1.8 million. So now you would think if Lane is offered, Lane's probably going to get 1.8 also. You can't. I don't think you can give him more than Aranda. I don't think that would be fair to either one of them. But Lane Kiffin, it's probably a significant raise of over $500,000. Coach O is a fantastic recruiter. We all know that. He wasn't the number one choice. I mean, Tom Herman pretty much used LSU to get more money, and that's what he did, and that's what he got at Houston going to Texas. But I like it. What are you going to lose, man? Just give him a few years. The recruits love him, and as long as he focuses on getting offensive coordinator, I mean, Ensminger is a great guy, and he was kind of forced in that role at the last minute. He did a fine job, but give him a few years with Coach O. I don't know who else was really out there, to be very honest. Everybody's going crazy about P.J. Fleck. He's 35 years old. He was never an offensive coordinator. He's not getting a job right now. He's missed out. He was up for the Purdue job, and Braum got that from Western Kentucky. Right. He's not up for the Houston job. He didn't have the Oregon job didn't go to him. So maybe his credentials aren't that good, but I don't really see who was out there. So if Ogeron will work out, maybe in a year or so, you can get somebody that's going to be a game changer. Because I didn't think there was a game changer out there except for a Herman.
Your thoughts?
And let's go back to Herman. The tomfoolery of last November cost them Tom Herman because he really didn't do anything. I mean, I know the early win against Oklahoma, first game for Houston this year, was helpful, but in the end, they wound up losing 3 games. I mean, Houston and Tom Herman together this year did not really help his resume. If LSU would have let Miles go as expected a year ago, Herman probably would have wound up the coach based off of that 1 year and the success there. That ship has sailed, and like Garland said, what do you have to lose at this point? If you don't get Jimbo Fisher and you don't get Tom Herman, and they're the clear-cut 2 guys that were connected, that were clear upgrades to Les Miles, you really have a bunch of guys out there, whether it was Larry Fedora at North Carolina, Mike Gundy's name came up, Oklahoma State, and Dana Holgerson at West Virginia. Those are the other names I heard. The only thing I can say, other than on paper and from what I've seen, that's not a big deal to pass those guys up and stick with what you know. If it ain't completely broken, don't completely fix it. Doing your due diligence is something that LSU fans have the right to be angry with Joe Alleva about. What would have hurt LSU to take a few days to bring these coaches in, talk to them, and then make a decision? Give those guys a chance to change your mind. Guys that didn't go 10-25 at Ole Miss. That's what LSU fans are mad about, and I think they would have accepted on a Wednesday after that Texas A&M win, after speaking to the coaches I just mentioned, that if LSU goes in that other direction anyway, at least fans would have said, well, at least they sat down and talked to the guys. They must not have impressed. It would have taken a little pressure off of Alleva now. He needs Ogeron to be successful. But worst case scenario for Ogeron, even at Ole Miss, when he left, 2 9-win Cotton Bowl seasons after he went 0-8 in the SEC. If he still can't make a program win, he'll still recruit to LSU well enough so that the next guy will win. So you're not going to lose a lot if he's unsuccessful.
Do you buy in the 12 to 15 candidates were vetted by Alleva? Do you believe that?
I'm sure he looked at other binders or whatever was submitted to him. We're hearing about the famous binder in Baton Rouge from Ogeron. I mean, if you're not speaking to them directly and sitting down and getting a feel for them, I don't think that's fully vetting anybody. And I know that Skip Bertman came public on radio up in Baton Rouge right after Miles was fired to talk about the vetting process back when Saban left and getting a feel for people. And whether you feel like Les Miles underachieved or not, they hired a good man who was capable of keeping LSU as a top 10 or 15 program. And that's not failure, considering replacing Nick Saban. What have we learned from Nick Saban in college football since he went to Alabama? He's irreplaceable. He's the best. And right now, everybody's competing for second place in the SEC until proven otherwise. And any coach LSU could have hired, not named Nick Saban, would have had them in the exact same boat.
Do you buy the 12 to 15 candidates that were vetted?
No, not at all. I don't really trust too much what Joe Alleva says.
Right.
His hirings have been very questionable. The way he handled last year with the A&M game, change in mind at halftime, and then we were never gonna fire him anyway. Right. LSU fans, he got a little reprieve with that Florida, them making them come to LSU this year. But now it's blown up your face. Now you got to go to Florida 2 years in a row. Next year's schedule is insanely brutal. Having to go to Florida, having to go to Alabama, and having to go to both Mississippi schools next year. That's a tough non-conference schedule. And they open the season elite. At least they get Brigham Young in their opener.
Yes.
Usually they play these brutally tough teams. Brigham Young is not what they used to be, so that'll at least be a nice landing point to start the season on a high note.
Let's talk about Coach O, the head coach. And I broached this with pretty much everyone that's been on this program, on the radio show. He did a great job of being a CEO of the program. I've said he can't micromanage the program. He's got to allow his coaches to put a game plan together and allow them to execute that game plan on game night. Do you anticipate him continuing to be the CEO of the LSU program? It's kind of hard when they take that interim name off the head coaching name. You become the head coach, and now you are really responsible for what's happening. From the ball boy all the way up to obviously the game plan and what's going to happen on Saturday night.
I think he's going to be able to hire people that he trusts across the board. He's going to have as much money as any head coach in the country to fill out his staff, and he's learned from his mistakes. He had success at USC and LSU in those interim roles by letting very qualified coaches do their jobs. He failed at Ole Miss by being too intense and too involved in areas that now he admits publicly he doesn't have expertise in dealing with. I trust that he's going to do a good job of letting his coaches coach. Will he hire the right coaches? Will he still be able to do the things that a head coach has to do during the game? Are we going to go for it here on fourth down? Managing the clock late in games where there were a couple of faux pas that stood out, Ole Miss, Alabama. You worry about that. If he can't handle that, that will be a problem. That's the difference between 11-1, 10-2, 10-2, 9-3. So we'll see. But I think LSU's program is in good hands because he understands the culture, he understands the recruiting landscape, and he has the money to let assistants do their jobs. And I have no doubt he's going to be successful at letting them do that. They may not overcome Alabama, but they should be able to out-recruit and beat every other team in the SEC West, and therefore every other team in the SEC, except maybe Auburn, because we've seen their ceiling. Other than that, you can't lose 2 out of 3 to Arkansas. You can't lose 2 out of 3 to Ole Miss. That's what got Les Miles fired, not losing to Alabama, although we know those losses to the Tide didn't help.
Right. Your take, Garland.
I don't think he's going to meddle with Dave Aranda. Obviously, Dave Aranda is now probably one of the top 3 defensive coordinators in America. You paid him $1.8 million for a reason. So he might dabble a little with the defensive line. I mean, that's his area.
But you wouldn't mind that, right? Considering,
No,
it's expertise.
And he opened up practices again, and I don't know if y'all saw this video. Trevante Valentine got in a fight during their Big Cat drill, and Coach O was the one. I mean, you've seen Trevante Valentine. He's like 320, 30 pounds. And, like, Coach O was, like, pulling him out, and you want that intensity. Defensive line, you're not messing with that much. You help with technique. But Dave Aranda's running the show, and I think Coach O saw what's happened on offense, that you need to leave it alone. You need to give a guy the job and let it be, because obviously he saw what happened with Miles and Cameron, and it was a disaster that Miles was messing with the game plans of Coach Cameron. Miles is past his time, and Orgeron saw the flaws that Miles had, and he's going to change all those. And I think Orgeron's going to let them all be. I mean, he's got some of the best recruiters in America with Corey Raymond at DB, Jabbar Jalouk, running backs coach. Focus on recruiting with those guys and let the other guys coach.
Your thoughts on the Citrus Bowl matchup against Louisville?
It's going to be a great one. I mean, it's going to be early. Wake up early, fellas. I mean, people have a long New Year's Eve. Don't start drinking Bloody Marys at 7 a.m. because you're not going to make it to the ball dropping at midnight.
You're talking to Tiger fans.
Yeah.
Look at that.
But Lamar Jackson will probably win the Heisman on Saturday. So you could possibly have, with Lamar Jackson, Darius Geis, and if Leonard Fournette plays, 3 of the top probably 10 offensive players in America in one game. I want to see what Dave Aranda's defense is going to be about in this game. I don't think Kendall Beckwith's going to be there, though. That isn't going to be no good. But Duke Riley, former John Curtis Patriot, has been doing really well for LSU in his place. The back end, Tre'Davious White, Jamal Adams, their final games. I know Jamal Adams hasn't come out and said he's going pro. He'd be totally stupid not to test those waters. So that's the big matchup I want to see. Lamar Jackson against Dave Aranda's defense, because last year Lamar Jackson torched A&M in the bowl game last yeast, so I'm intrigued to see what he does against the SC team.
Your thoughts?
Having a month, if you're Dave Aranda, to prepare for Lamar Jackson and what we've seen over the years from that style of offense under Bobby Petrino, I like the Tigers' chances. Beckwith not likely to be available is a big deal, but watch Devin White, the freshman who was named All-SEC freshman by the coaches today, giving him a month to take over in the middle of that defense. He'll have a steady hand in the senior Riley. I think they're going to handle it really well. LSU's personnel is really built well to stop teams like Louisville and what they do, and I think the defense will do well. On the flip side, Darius Geis will have a big game. It should be a victory for LSU, even without a Beckwith, even without a Fournette, because we've seen Louisville exposed at times, especially by teams that have disciplined defenses. They'll be fired up to play, but I like the Tiger defense in the matchup more than I like Louisville's sum of all parts.
Juniors, how many juniors do you think that Coach O can woo into staying at LSU?
Well, we were talking about Malachi Dupree before the show and him being a big factor. You'd love to have him come back and be one of those key receivers on the field, especially if you're going to put more wideouts out there in a different offense. I think his decision is going to be based a lot not only on the advisory board for the draft, but who LSU hires and his comfort level as to who's likely to be throwing him the football next year. That's the one to watch, which you mentioned with Jamal Adams. He's a first-round pick. I don't see how you risk it and come back. And those guys come back sometimes because they want to win a championship. We talked about LSU's schedule. It's not going to happen more than likely, so he probably goes pro. I mean, guys are going to be weighing it based on their potential with that advisory board and their needs off the field. So we'll get a better feel for that as we get around the bowl games and that information leaks out. But those are just a couple of names. We can expect Adams to go, and Dupree is the big question mark at this point.
You spent a lot of time in Baton Rouge. Your thoughts?
Yeah, Dupree, that's the key, but he'll be the number one receiver next year if he stays because Trayvon Durrell's gone. Who are the other receivers you got? DJ Chark?
Right, Jazz Ferguson?
Yeah, Jazz Ferguson, D. Anderson. He's going to be the number one guy in that offense next year. So do you want to get third and fourth round? I know most guys just want to get to the NFL. They don't want to deal with injury issues. But wide receivers don't deal with as much injury issues as like a Leonard Fournette. I mean, Fournette, slam dunk, get out of there. We've seen when he missed 4 games this year with injury. That's going to be the one to watch because we know the other guys are leaving. Jamal Adams has no reason to stay. But Malachi, that's going to be the intriguing one to look at.
You guys think that Fournette will play in the bowl game?
I do not. I don't think he gains anything from
it. He wants to play, but I would say it would be smart for him to sit it out. Right. He's already, Mel Kiper has him number 2 on his big board. He's going to go in the top 10. I know he doesn't gain anything by playing that game. This game, it's a glorified exhibition. I know a lot's on the line for the future and recruiting and that. But for Leonard Fournette, he's given everything he could to LSU. LSU fans cannot badmouth him and say that he quit on me, and he did. I just say sit out this game.
But of course, if somebody trash talks him before the game from Louisville on the sidelines, he might suit up.
He might try. That's right. No doubt about that. You're watching Inside New Orleans Sports each and every Thursday night right here on WLAE with our live broadcast at 6 p.m. You can catch us on Friday nights, 10 o'clock right here on WLAE. Also on Pelican Sports Television statewide. That is 9 p.m. every Friday night. Jude Young of SportsNola.com and WGSO Radio. Garland, Gillen of Fox 8 Sports are our guests tonight. We'll come back, talk a little bit about the New Orleans Saints. Also, we'll try to get into some Pelicans and your phone calls coming up in the second half. I'm Eric Asher, your host. Don't go anywhere.
Located at 3701 Iberville Street in Mid-City is Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Open 7 days a week, Katie's offers daily specials for lunch, dinner, and Sunday brunch. Serving New Orleans cuisine such as fried shrimp platters, grilled redfish, and a fully stocked bar. And don't forget about our expanded event seating and local entertainment. Featured on the Best of Food Network's diners, drive-ins, and dives, Katie's Restaurant and Bar. Amco Fence, locally owned and operated since 1976. Fully licensed and insured and a member of the BBB, Amco serves both residential and commercial customers. If you're looking to repair, replace, or install a fence for security or aesthetic reasons, Amco Fence supplies wooden, metal, chain link, vinyl, and ornamental or automatic gates. Amco aims to satisfy your fencing needs. Amco Fence, 504-468-9559 or AmcoFenceCompany.com.
TikTok Cafe, located on Causeway South at the I-10 in Metairie, is open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. Our menu offers breakfast dishes like our Western omelet made from scratch biscuits, grits, egg sunny side up, and lunch specials like our homemade cheeseburgers with a side of golden brown fries. Don't forget about our weekday lunch special, and that every Tuesday is steak night. TikTok Cafe, open 24/7 at Causeway South at the I-10 in Metairie.
Welcome back to Inside New Orleans Sports. Garland, Gillen of Fox 8 Sports, Jude Young of SportsNola.com and WGSO Radio are our guests tonight. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Garland, you just mentioned it. We're going into the B block now, and we haven't even talked Saints yet, but, gosh, I mean, you'd like to be able to say that the Saints deserve to be at the top of the list for a show like this, but they really don't. And after the most complete game of the season against the Rams, 555 yards of offense, 49 points. The D shut out the Rams in the second half. Saints played with no energy, no sense of urgency against Detroit. We saw Payton animated on the sidelines against the Rams like he's just winning the Super Bowl. And then we didn't see that type of enthusiasm. And I think this young team kind of fed on that. They fed off the enthusiasm of the Rams game with their head coach. And I think the reason why they came out lethargic is because of the way the head coach approached this game. And, I've thrown bouquets at Payton all season long, thinking this is his best coaching job since the Super Bowl, because this is not a talented roster. But you got to lay this on Payton right now. The way this team came out and performed last week, they just weren't ready to play.
And you wind up getting fired up because of a personal vendetta to beat a losing team. But then when a 7-5 team that's on a roll comes to town, you're not emotionally there for a home game. And on top of that, you blame Payton not only for the emotional state going into that game and how it affected the performance, but guys, I can't explain in a game where it was close and it was only a 6-point game early in the fourth quarter. At the end, you have Brees throwing 44 passes. You only run the ball 12 times. A total lack of patience to have balance that is inexplicable, and Payton's fingerprints are all over it. You simply can't go out there against a good football team that's playing as well as Detroit is, and they've gotten a lot out of their defense this year, and try to be one-dimensional even in the Dome. And it's like Ed Daniels wrote for Sports NOLA today. This is such a different team than the Saints in their heyday. They used to win at home. You couldn't come into the Saints' house and dominate the ball for 37 minutes, and the Saints only score 13 points. It's a different team. It's not as talented as it used to be. And if the Saints are going to be able to win the rest of the way, because, I mean, we don't want to talk about it, but if they win 4 straight games, they're probably going to the playoffs. We don't expect that, obviously.
Not anymore,
but if they're going to, it starts against a Tampa team that's 25th against the run this week. If the Saints don't run the ball this week, or at least dedicate themselves to trying, then you definitely point at the head coach, because the offense is his baby.
The last time the Saints won 4 games in a row was 2013. To start the season, they won 5 in a row to start the season. I just don't see it. I mean, they got a 10% chance to make the playoffs right now. And you know what, Eric, I think it's a good reason we're waiting until the B block to talk about them, because nothing's going to change on that team. Sean Payton, unless Sean Payton goes to Mickey Loomis and says, I'm out, that is the only way things are going to change. Because Sean Payton has 4 years left on his deal, making, $35-36 million a year. He's going nowhere. Mickey Loomis is going absolutely nowhere. Him and Dennis Lau should pretty much run the show.
No doubt.
And the only thing it could change is that they bring in somebody else and bump up Mickey Loomis to a non-GM role where he kind of oversees everything, but he's not the GM. Get somebody that Ireland and Loomis and Payton are close with. But Drew Brees, after this year, only has 1 year left on his contract. In the offseason, do you blow the whole thing up? Do you trade Drew Brees for a first or second round pick? That's something they really got to look at, because what are you going to get? You get Drew Brees for 1 more year, and then he's probably gone.
Yes.
Why not trade him and get some value? I know this is like blasphemy right now to say trade Drew Brees, but you need assets going forward. And right now they need a rusher, a guy that's going to make sacks. Delvin Breaux, I don't know if he's going backwards. I don't know if this is like Keenan Lewis, another New Orleans guy that just downhill quickly. Delvin Breaux did not look had a lot of penalties in that game. I don't know if his career is going on the downturn. They need there's a lot of areas in that team they need fixing, and I think maybe trading Drew Brees and getting those chips is going to start changing that fast. Because right now they got the number 9 pick in the NFL draft. Imagine you get a top 10 pick if you keep going, your team keeps going down, and then you get Drew Brees. You can maybe get another first round pick. 2 first-round picks that can start getting it back up. Now I don't know if Sean Payton wants to sit around for a rebuild,
right?
But you might be forcing his hand. Hey, we're trading Drew Brees. What do you want to do? Do you want to stay or not? And you force Sean Payton's hand.
Right. And look, honestly, there also has to be changes in that personnel department. Somebody's got to come in and, whether we used to say that Payton respects, but somebody's got to come in and take control of the draft. Somebody's got to come take control of free agency. You might be able to trade Drew Brees and get a first-round pick, but the way these guys have picked in the past, again, looks like a pretty darn good draft class. It really does. But for the most part, throughout the Payton's tenure here in New Orleans, they have bottomed out in terms of the draft. So, this could be said on the basketball side. They need someone or a group of people that, again, understand how to draft, how to bring in players, how to evaluate players. I said before on this radio, on my radio show and this show, you look at the Saints roster and it's full of West Coast players. My theory is that, after all the meetings are over and Payton's going back to the hotel room at night, he flips on the TV. Well, the only games he's seeing is West Coast games. And he's seeing these players. I saw that guy play. He looked good. I saw that guy play. He looked good. And, of course, he falls in love with those players. Not that there's anything wrong with West Coast football, but, my gosh, Alabama's a couple states over. LSU's 80 miles up the river, and they're putting more players in the NFL than any other university. And there's a dearth of those players on the Saints roster. And so they need to fine-tune what's going on behind the scenes. And that's been a problem. One of the reasons why we're seeing, back-to-back 7-9 seasons, looking at possibly, again, another losing season this year.
I've got some more bad news for you, because we can talk about all these changes that we think needs to happen all we want, but it's not going to happen, because I can tell you the mindset inside the building on the football side, on Airline. They believe that this is their offseason to make the big move. They believe they're on the right track. Now, it's going to be the same people in the places right now making these decisions. So that means money now freed up from all the cap hell they've been in the last few years. Well, they have money to spend now. Right. They think they're going to go into the draft. I can almost guarantee, no matter where they pick in the first round, they're going to go after that edge pass rusher and hope he's the answer there. They're going to try to fill all these other roles. They're going to improve the interior of their offensive line with another guard at least. I think that's where they go and spend their most money on a veteran. So we'll see. But they believe that next year is their year. And they're going to ride it out with Brees, whether he stays with this contract or not. It's either going to succeed and they'll be a playoff team, or it's going to fail and they're going to be left holding the bag, like you mentioned, and then it'll be starting over. Sean Payton will bail out if it fails. 2017 is everything, because we see tickets sold, but a lot of empty seats in that stadium, a lot of fans selling off their tickets to opposing fans.
A lot of visiting fans.
That is the sign that if Mr. Benson were involved, he would see that from his suite. Right. That would not miss his eye. Maybe what's going on in the field will, but that he would notice. Right now, they're hoping that is reversed next year and they take that step forward, because if they don't, it's only going to get worse.
Well, what's your take on Jude's points?
Yeah, and I want to really hear from what Mr. Benson has to say. I mean, he's been quiet, and I know he was going through court battles last year, but that's over with.
It's like Weekend at Bernie's out there, man.
The only time, the last 3 times I've interviewed Tom Benson have all been about his horses, and that was a great story. But that story is gone. 2-horse and Derby, that's gone. We need to focus on the future, and I'd really like to know what he has to think about all this. Other person I talked about, Drew Brees being traded. What does Sean Payton hate more than anything? One of the things he hates most: distractions. Back in the day, Jeff Charleston, 2009, when he said that Matt Stafford was fresh meat. Sean Payton came into Tom's Picayune and said, "Don't trust these reporters. Look what they did to us. They're trying to break us apart." He loves to put us against the world. Brandon Cooks last week with a stupid Instagram post. That's what he done. You could tell on Sunday in the post game, the last thing Coach Payton wanted to talk about was Brandon Cooks' Instagram post about out getting targets.
Right.
That's another one to watch in the offseason. You can get a really good draft pick for Brandon Cooks. That could be another, if you're not going to get rid of Drew Brees, get rid of Brandon Cooks. I mean, they're really good about plugging in guys. I mean, obviously you want Brandon Cooks on your team, but if you can get somebody else that can play defense, because Willie Snead doing well, Michael Thomas.
He's going to be the number 1 receiver.
Michael Thomas, he might not play this week. He's missed practice on Wednesday and Thursday, but that's a nice chess piece also to have on that team.
And he's talking about who's in charge of different parts of that organization right now. I think the only involvement at Mr. Benson's age and likely health situation right now is he's wondering, how's our franchise value been this year versus last year? Oh, it's up. Good. How are our revenues? Oh, record revenues again. Okay, that's fine. That's all he's worried about. And at his age, you can't blame him. If the business side is good, then business is good. Sean Payton has control of issues like Brandon Cooks. And I have a feeling that those leaks that came out the morning of the game because of what Cooks did, that's no coincidence. And anybody that thinks that came from an agent or from another team is crazy. I'm willing to bet it came from in-house, and it was a message being sent the old-fashioned way from Sean Payton to Brandon Cooks. We don't want boat rockers around here. We had that issue a few years ago, and we purged our locker room of them. If you're going to be a prima donna, you're going to be that prima donna elsewhere. And yes, he does have value, so you can trade him away, find another guy to stretch the field, and center your offense around Mike Thomas. And if anything else happens with Cooks, other than contrition and putting his head down and doing his job, he'll be playing someplace else.
Got one other thing on Tom Benson. I'll tell you one thing. He has a lot of willpower to go to every single one of those Pelicans games. He's at every single one.
Oh, I know.
That is a lot of home games to watch and a lot of bad basketball to watch. With the Saints, you're only going to watch 8 home games, 8 road games. He goes to every game, so he goes 16 of those. To sit through 41 home games and see that bad at basketball, I'm amazed something hadn't happened quicker on the Pelican side, because that's a lot of bad basketball that Mr. and Mrs. Benson are watching this year.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. I mean, look, it's in shambles. So for an organization just a few years ago that was looked as the gold standard, okay, I mean, it has fallen apart. And it's lack of accountability. At one time, Benson watched very, very closely the money that was being spent, money that was being wasted. You're telling me that all this dead money that's happened over the last few years, that Tom Benson 15, 20 years ago, even 10 years ago, would not have again fired someone or been all over those individuals that were in charge there? What's going on with the Pelicans? A travesty at this point, okay? So, that's what happens when you have absentee ownership at the top. And, with all due respect to Mrs. Benson, I don't know if it gets better one way or the other if Mr. Benson passes. It may get worse, and that's not good for fans here in New Orleans.
Let's face it, Drew Brees is the most valuable crutch in franchise history and maybe in the history of the NFL. He's propped up a franchise playing great football even now. We're talking late 30s in his career, playing great football, and it's churning out a bunch of 7 and 9 seasons. That's doing just enough to keep all the tickets sold. That's keeping the revenues where they need to be. But without him, it looks like the bottom will fall out hard, and there's nobody that's going to predict anything else other than that. But because he's still there, it's obvious that Mr. Benson and what attention he's paying to the team, and whether it's Dennis Lauscher, who stays on the business side, or Mickey Loomis, they're comfortable because they know, hey, we have Drew. We have control of Drew. And until Drew's not worth having, we think we're going to be able to keep him around, as was evidenced this past offseason. I think Brees wants to finish his career as a Saint. But if the bottom does fall out completely next year, it won't only fall out on a season. It could very well fall out an entire franchise. And, the Saints, by the way, are the crutch that holds the Pelicans up, because I don't know how they can accept what happens as far as the turnstiles go for the basketball side.
Yeah.
You know where you affect Tom Benson is in his wallet. And right now, all 3 of his teams, the horse racing, the GMB, the Pelicans, and the Saints, are all still making a lot of money. Now, Pelicans, if you're a med student, you want to get some studying done, the Pelicans games, I've been to, 10 of them this year, 5, 6, 7, 8. The atmosphere is just not there.
Right.
I mean, tonight, playing the Sixers, that's going to be friends and family crowd. It's going to be under 10,000 announced, actual, possibly 5,000. Next Tuesday, which usually is a weak crowd, next Tuesday when the Golden State Warriors are there, that'll be close to a sellout, but it still won't be a sellout. Watch, it'll be really close. When he starts losing money, that's when it's going to start really affect them. They still have the season ticket sales for the Saints. So in the game day, they get all that money from game day, which is over $1.2 million per game they make. So right now, he's making money on everything. I mean, his horse racing, he's set out his breeding rights to 2 of his top horses. So everything he's touching right now is making money, but in a few years, it's going to start going backwards there. Fans are going to start dumping those season tickets. You can see it now.
Well, Garland, let me say this. In the horse racing, obviously not getting subsidized by the taxpayers of the state of Louisiana, but both those professional franchises are. It's hard to lose money with the type of deal that he has. Basically, we've handed the keys to the dome and the arena to Tom Benson and say, make as much money as you can with this. Please don't take the franchises away from New Orleans.
And he's getting the advertising on both those places.
Look, it's ridiculous.
He's getting the Smoothie King money. He's getting the Mercedes-Benz money.
You thought cash inducements were lucrative.
Yeah.
I mean, this is even more lucrative for him.
And he owns 2 major franchises in professional sports where the big 3, the TV contracts alone make you money.
Yeah.
You have to try really hard to lose
right.
money right now. We saw what the NBA just got. Now, we'll watch the NFL and what's been going on with that league. And I think you could see maybe what happened on Election Day a month ago might be something that is connected to the lower ratings of the NFL and what image they're portraying right now. If that starts hitting the Saints in the future, I think it'll be after Mr. Benson's around, and it could be the type of thing that exacerbates a problem that we see the end of the cliff, the end of the Payton Brees cliff, and it could be really scary because that'll affect 2 major franchises, the only 2 we've got.
Yeah. Guys, think about this for a second. When is the last time either one of these franchises were 500?
Well, they haven't. The Saints haven't been over 500 since, 2013,
Okay,
right?
right.
And the Pelicans.
Come on. We're just talking 500.
Their playoff year,
Right.
2 years ago.
Right.
Because the last 2 years, they started
Right.
off just nosedive right to start the season. It's amazing that the Saints haven't been over 500 since 2013. This is going to be the 3rd year in a row that we're going to cover Saints not making the playoffs. It's just bad sports all around. I mean, these last 2 years, between LSU, the Saints, and the Pelicans, LSU football, it has been some bad sports we cover. We should get our own. People start feeling bad for us having to cover all these bad sports. I mean, yeah, I know
We're selling that.
Yeah, I know people.
That ain't happening. I'd like to be able to sell that, cover that too, but that ain't happening.
We have to cover sports for a living.
I understand that, but it's been a lot of bad sports that we've
No, it
been
has.
covering.
It has. And let me tell you something. There's nothing more unfriendlier than being at a facility when teams are not winning.
Right.
Okay?
And it's as depressing for us as
Right.
it is for you, and we can't escape it. We can't turn off the knob
Right.
and go do something else. That's what we do every day.
Yes.
Yeah, it's been bad.
Let's head to the phone lines. 866-3200. Greg is in Houma. Greg, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports.
Hey, guys.
Greg?
I just want to piggyback on what y'all saying. I think something needs to happen, exploding, get rid of everybody and start clean and fresh. My question is, though, is if you trade Drew Brees, I mean, you got to start with a quarterback. So do you trade him for maybe a backup somewhere in the NFL? Because obviously I don't see any college quarterbacks that we can go after that would start the rebuilding process. I'll hang up and listen.
Thank you, Greg. Guys?
Well, if you're trading him, you don't worry about who you're replacing him with because you're starting over. You know you're not going to be good. So you're looking to acquire assets and try to build a stronger overall football team, but it's going to be really hard to fill that void. So you don't worry about winning for at least a couple of seasons. But what Brees brings back, based totally on what happens with teams' flexibility around the league to add somebody like Brees and what they're able to give you in return. So until you know that, it's really hard to guess what the next moves are. But if Sean Payton were to stick around only because he had to, and they theoretically did trade Brees, I guess you'd give the keys to Luke McCown short term and go with at least one young quarterback and see how it goes. I don't like these names I'm seeing as first-round quarterbacks this year. This is not necessarily the year to do it.
If you're going to trade within the NFL, there's one guy on the list that's going to be trade bait, and that's Jimmy Garoppolo. He's got 1 year left on his contract after this year. It's been made no secret that the Patriots are probably going to deal him because they can get a lot of assets for him. Other than that, the college football draft, the quarterback for North Carolina is number 1 on the board. His name is not in my head right now. Deshaun Watson was possibly one of the big names. Kaiser at Notre Dame.
Right.
You're right. There's no Andrew Luck in this draft that's going to blow you out. So you might have to get some defensive players and try to get the Jimmy Garoppolo trade. And there's some assets on the Saints that you can trade to get Jimmy Garoppolo. And who's Sean Payton's best friend in the NFL? So
right.
Belichick, Jeff Duncan broached this in the preseason when we were all there, and we got to watch Garoppolo in practice every day for when we were up there during 2 days during training camp. So we got to see Garoppolo up close, and he looks good. And they got a good backup for the Jacoby Brissett. So I could see Garoppolo's going to go somewhere else, and that could be a good landing point for the Saints.
Chris, welcome to the show.
Hello?
Hey, Chris.
Hey. My question is, I got 2 questions. Okay. My question is, if the Saints going to win these last 4 games, how about the Pelicans? When is the Pelicans going to start winning?
Okay, I didn't get that, but on the screen it talks about the Saints running game, guys.
Well, the running game's not the biggest problem they got right now. Ingram might not play this week there. He's injured. You don't have to put a lot of assets in the running game. And please, during this draft run-up, I do not want to hear Saints fans say we need Leonard Fournette. Just don't go there because they're not drafting Leonard Fournette. The last thing, the Saints have made it known that they like to get guys in the bottom rounds of the NFL draft for the running back position. I don't think the running game's a problem right now. Tim Hightower was a great pickup for them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Ingram, when he's healthy, is a great
and we haven't seen Lasco because he's had the hamstring injury, but he showed flashes, no doubt about it. Is a possibility Saints run the table here at the end? I mean, I've kind of, I've thrown bouquets at them because it looked like toward the middle of the season they were starting to play better. I'm off that bandwagon, especially after last week's performance. You got to play Tampa, that is a team that is surging. 2 out of 3 weeks, you got to go to Arizona, and then you got to take on the division-leading Falcons in Atlanta. They're closing the Georgia Dome. That's the game they closed the Georgia Dome on.
Well, it's a great question to bring up when somebody's asking about the running game. Saints need to dedicate themselves to running the football, even if it's not overly successful, even if Sean Payton is feeling impatient about it and trying to tell Pete Carmichael, okay, we want to throw the ball more, because they need to keep that defense fresh and off the field. And they're playing a Bucs team that's 25th in the league against the run, and they're playing them twice in 2 weeks. You don't want to go to Arizona if you beat the Bucs the first time and you're still alive and take on a Cardinals team that has elite players in the secondary and good pass rush and not run the football there to give yourself a chance to be there close late on the road. And if it matters at the end of the season against Atlanta, we saw what happened when the Saints got in a shootout with the Falcons the first time around. It's probably not going to go well on the road. So if the Saints have any hope of doing that, it's about running the football and avoiding turnovers. Give Brees a chance to win games late, because if they don't, in one of these games against the Bucs and certainly against the Cardinals alone, they could experience a very Lions type effect if they're not balanced on offense.
I'm intrigued to see who's going to be playing calling this week, because it was obvious that Sean Payton had one of his weakest play calling exhibitions out there this season. The 3rd and 1 on the first drive, spread them out 5 receivers, 3rd and 1, just jam it right down their throat. I would probably venture to say, obviously he wanted to be the play caller against Greg Williams. Yeah. It's well documented the hate he had toward Williams. I would think that Pete Carmichael is going to be back calling plays when they go to Raymond James Stadium this Sunday.
And rightly so. What about the possibility of running the table here?
I mean, road games at 2 teams that are right now in first place in the NFC South. The Falcons' offense has just been lighting it up recently. The Kansas City Chiefs, they came in and beat them last week. The Chiefs are going to make a big run in the playoffs here. They might be in that AFC title game against New England Patriots. So I'm not down on the Falcons for losing that game. That's just 2 tough games. Arizona is struggling, but they're still somewhat in the fight there. You have all contenders, so I just can't see the Saints. Saints don't have any dogs left. No Rams teams left on the schedule.
Wallace is in New Orleans. Wallace, welcome. You're on Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Wallace.
How y'all doing today, man? I have the answer to this. To see Sean Payton, Mickey Loomis, they're using Tom Benson because he's not, in his right mind. So I say get rid of the owner. I hope he can sell his things to somebody else. A new owner come in and clean house. Get rid of Sean Payton, Mickey Loomis, and all of them, and start over, man. Because as long as we got them, the Saints ain't going to do nothing. They just eating that man money up. Thank you.
Thank you, Wallace. I wouldn't hold my breath on that one. Unless something happens with this court case, and I don't anticipate at this point where they got to sell the teams to satisfy the judgment. I just don't see it happening, guys.
That's not going to happen anytime soon, and things would have to fall apart on the field and at the box office for the team, drawing fans to games, and we're talking years down the line before anything like that happens, for that to even become a possibility. And if all that happens, then you're talking about selling the team to who? The highest bidder.
Right.
And the highest bidder more than likely isn't going to be anybody that cares about New Orleans.
That's right, and that's the key. I don't think we have the type of wealth that is necessary in this city to be able to keep the teams here if ultimately both teams went on the market.
What is Tom Benson going to do if he sells the teams? This is it. He still goes to work, 6 days a week? It's well documented. He gets out there at 6 in the morning. He's got his briefcase. if he sells these teams, he's just going to wilt away in his farm. He's not going anywhere. He's making way too much money. He enjoys looking at the bottom line. I've been in his office. He's got the books on his desk. He loves looking at making that big-time money, which I don't blame him.
Counting by trade.
Yeah, and I just don't see it ain't happening. He's making too much money.
Ernest, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Ernest.
First, I'd like to tell you guys and your families all Merry Christmas and God bless y'all.
Merry Christmas.
I have two questions. The first one is, did Sean Payton make a mistake keeping Grayson and letting Ryan Griffin go? And the second question is Payton on the hot seat?
Thank you for the phone call. I think he made a mistake with keeping Grayson and letting Griffin go.
Probably did, but I mean, is it really a spec on the whole thing at this point? No, it's really not that important. Neither one of them were the quarterback of the future, and McCown's proven to be a solid backup. So I don't think that matters all too much. And the bigger question of Sean Payton, and is his job on the line? Not a chance.
No way.
No, and we all say that Sean Payton's a quarterback whisperer, but he's only a quarterback whisperer if he's got one of the best players in NFL history. Because if you go back to the Tyler Palkos and the Sean Canfields and the Garrett Graysons.
Ooh, you're bringing up some names.
Those are all guys that he thought he could mold into the next great thing, and they have all been bust. The only the backups have been guys he's pulled from other teams, the Jamie Martins, the Mark Brunells, and the Luke McCowns. Garrett Grayson's going to be another one that's a dud. You could probably, if you really want, you can get Ryan Griffin back in the offseason. Sure. These guys are on short contracts. And I'm sure that the Bucs have no worries of losing him because Jameis Winston is going to be there for the next 10 to 15 years.
Hot seat?
No.
No.
He's got so much money coming to him right now. No, there's no way. Tom Benson is not like losing money. You think he's cutting a check for $36 million? No way. He likes making that money.
Dennis, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sports. Hey, Dennis. Hey, Dennis, you with us? All right, let's go to the next caller, guys. Why don't you get up on the screen? Let's go to Art. Art, welcome to Inside New Orleans Sport. Hey, Art.
Hey, what's going on?
How you doing,
man? I got one quick question. I mean, they got Tony Romo up for grabs. I'm from Terrell, Texas. I now live in Slidell. They got Tony Romo up for grabs. Pick him up. I think he still got it in it.
Let me let the panel answer that question.
Watch the Cowboys. If they clinch first round bye and they clinch home field advantage, they're going to put Tony Romo out there in week 16 or 17 to show the NFL.
Showcase?
You got to do the showcase. Look what happened with Matt Flynn. They put Matt Flynn the final game of the year against the Detroit Lions. They won 49-42 through 6 touchdown passes. I guarantee that'd be a solid. Jerry Jones, that's a good goodbye. They love each other. They're really close. Jerry's going to give Tony that big shot to show that he's still got it. That's not a bad one because that could fill the 2-year gap until you can develop another quarterback if you draft one. If you trade away Drew Brees and get some assets and you can get Tony Romo, what are you, a 4th-round pick, a 5th-round pick? You can get it for cheap.
Right.
The thing is, I don't know if Tony Romo is going to want to come to the Saints. He can go to the Broncos and play with one of the top 10 offenses in the NFL because I don't know if Trevor Siemian or Paxton Lynch are the answer right now.
Your thoughts?
Well, if the Saints wind up getting rid of Drew Brees and replace him with Tony Romo, then a team like the Broncos is going to benefit from Drew Brees being on the market. So that automatically shrinks the market for Romo. We know the college connection between he and Payton and going back to the Cowboys and Romo's start. So if for some reason Brees left, that's a decent shout. But let's put it this way. Drew Brees has to want to leave this offseason for the Saints to get rid of him. He's still playing at an elite level. He's still one of the top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL.
Absolutely.
And the Saints aren't going to be trading him unless he really wants to get out of here.
Could you get a Herschel Walker deal for him?
For Drew Brees?
Yeah.
I will say this. Drew Brees only has a few years left, and he probably realizes that he's not going to win the Super Bowl in New Orleans. The Broncos, I mean, John Elway's probably looking right now because Trevor Siemian and Paxton Lynch are the answer. I would probably venture to guess that John Elway is going to try to make a run at Tony Romo or Drew Brees this offseason.
Broncos, Texans, another mistake with Osweiler. I don't know how they were the only ones not to know with Brock Osweiler.
$72 million mistake.
The Jets, we know they're always desperate at quarterback. There are suitors out there.
But what could you get for him? That's the key. We've only got about 50 seconds, so that's going to be one of the keys.
That's good defense, though. You're naming teams. Drew Brees would only go to a few teams, and it's going to be either the Texans, the Broncos, teams of solid defenses there. You know another one to watch? Carson Palmer's at the end of the line right now. Arizona's got a great defense. Drew Brees could go right in there and start right away.
Great talent on offense,
too. Jude, Young, Garland, Gillen, thanks so much for being with us on Inside New Orleans Sports. Thanks so much for tuning in. Remember, there's a rebroadcast of this program each and every Friday night right here on WLAE at 10 p.m. Also on Pelican Sports Television. That's 9 p.m. every Friday night. You can catch me on the radio, 9:90 a.m. WGSO, 11 a.m. until 1 p.m. weekdays. You get the TuneIn Radio app. It's a free download for your smartphone or tablet, or you can listen live, download the podcast at ericasher.com. Don't forget also, you can check out all the previous episodes of Inside New Orleans Sports also at ericasher.com as well. Special thanks to the WLAE production staff, including Ron Yeager, Jim Dotson, Kenny Juneau, also Christy Smith, my director William Hill, and special thanks to these great guests, Garland, Gillen, and also Jude Young. I'm your host, Eric Asher. Thanks so much for watching. We'll see you right back here next Thursday night for another edition of Inside New Orleans Sports. Have a great week.
Inside New Orleans Sports with Eric Asher is the first place award winner of the 2015 New Orleans Press Club's Excellence in Journalism Award for the category of Best TV Sports Show.